I think we're on. He's gonna announce it.
Right.
I'm not sure.
So this is a shir in Sefer Tanya from the Alter Rebbe, and today is Kof Vav Elul Toshin Aleph, and we are holding in Perek Aleph on Omid number 10, somewhat near the end of the Omid. So we saw that the first nefesh which is born into the Adam is what we saw was the nefesh mitzad ha-klipo va-sitra achra. So we dealt at some length with the concept of klipa, similarly with sitra achra, and this nefesh enters the medium of the dam. In other words, that the what you might call the conductor of the nefesh bahamis is the dam, and the purpose of that is lahachiyes haguf, to give life and preservation, daily preservation to the body. That's to say that the principal concern of this nefesh is to give physical life, is to give. Now that doesn't mean that physical life is not anything of importance. Physical life is a tremendous divine power, but it goes in the form of what the body implies, haguf, and everybody understands that the body, the way it is a material, physical entity which is drawn after the physical and the material. Ukidiksiv, and as it is written, ki nefesh habosor padam ahi. But that's written in Sefer Vayikra in reference to the prohibition to eat blood in general. Whenever we slaughter an animal, we must not eat the blood. And the reason given is ki nefesh habosor, because the living soul, as it were, of the flesh is within the blood. Dam badam hi. Well, from that we see several things. First of all, we see that there is such a thing as a nefesh habosor, a nefesh which is shayach to the flesh precisely. Nefesh habasar. And we see, similarly, that even though it's got a shaychus to the basar, nonetheless it's a nefesh, it's a spiritual entity which is enclosed and to be found inside the dam. Well, we explained in one of our previous classes that the dam is also made up of different vaporized sections which make it a vehicle for carrying the spiritual entity which is linked with the flesh. The nefesh which we're describing here precisely is able to be carried and spread into the body through the dam. Being as it is, the dam has certain vapors within it which elevate it into a higher spiritual entity. I think we dealt briefly with that in previous classes. Umimena, and from this nefesh, which is precisely for the purpose of giving life force and daily preservation into the body, umimena bois kol hamidos rois me arba yisaides roim shaba. And from this nefesh there come all of the evil attributes. Now midos means emotional attributes, meaning attributes from the heart. What we have, I suppose it would be fair to call them emotional attributes, and these are evil. Kol hamidos rois me arba yisaides roim shaba, from the four evil elements in this nefesh, which makes up which is lahachis aguf and is inside the dam. So we see here then that we meet the word evil for the first time. Midas rois, evil, midas, evil attributes, from the four evil elements of this nefesh. And so we spoke in some detail in previous classes about this appearance of the word evil when we hadn't used such a word up till now. We'd only said klipa v'sitra achra. We didn't actually use the word evil, which means that evil in the Tanya must have a delicate sort of appearance. It's hard to understand that evil just means pure, what we might call deliberate and murderous evil, just nor it would appear that evil is a sort of a result and a development automatic and to be expected from this in an automatic and expected way from this nefesh which is connected with the dam. And we went into that, I think, and we're going to deal with it a little bit more as we go on now, that evil in Tanya means where you do something purely for your own self, purely for your own motivation, and you're just given over to fulfill your own desires, and you're not concerned about what is the plan of Hashem in that particular inyan. What did Hashem want of us in this particular matter? And that's the classical question that presents itself in the front of every Jew all the days of his life. What do I find to be the will of Hashem in this particular matter? And what do I hold and find to be the instruction of the Torah in this particular matter, which will embrace my reactivity to that and my reaction, and it'll lead me either the way of Hashem in a selfless way, or will lead me through thinking only of my own self and my own pleasures, particularly into what could drop into evil. And evil will then be not recognizing and feeling Hashem's plan in whatever's done. That's called evil, according to Tanya. And Ameli said this particular nefesh, since as we saw it's from klipa, which just means using things without realizing the more inner pneumistic message that they have, just like a klipa on a pri, or sitracha going over the other side of the street, not really realizing what is your real and required direction. So then you fall into it. You fall into evil, and you cause that nefesh to express itself in a dictating way within your life, that it begins to push evil elements into your life, and you become, an angry and irritable person. You're given over to being, very particular about your own feelings and your own honor and all of those inyanim, which are called kas v'gaiva. Gaiva meaning conceit, being concerned with my own self, very, very particular about my own self. So you guys are going to have a lesson in that going to 770. One of the basic lessons that 770 teaches you is that you mustn't be too particular about your own self. If you get pushed around a little bit, then it's not so terrible. And if you get a little bit stretched, here and there, that's not so terrible. As is one on the famous Pisgum that happened with the Rebbe, the famous little story that happened that there came an important rabbinic visitor to Lubavitch for one of the big Yom Tovim. I don't know if it was for Rosh Hashanah, but for Shavuos, or for and there was thousands of them sitting there, and he got pushed around, and he was very horrified, and he felt it was very improper towards his covered that he was being pushed around and stooped, and so eventually he got into Yechidus with the Rebbe Tzaddik, who asked him what was his impression of the life of the Chassidim, how did he experience the Yontif, how did it go, and everything. So he honestly complained to the Tzemach Tzedek that he felt it was very disordered the way people behaved, they pushed, and he was stooped, very heavily, and he felt that wasn't to push from one place to the other. He didn't feel that was a proper way to behave, particularly to a rabbinic figure. So the Tzemach Tzedek answered him and said, who told you that you should make yourself such a Matthias that wherever you go in the base medrash you find your Matthias? In other words, his complaint was that wherever he was in the base of medrash he was pushed. So if he went to another side, he got pushed over there, and he got pushed to the other side. So someone said to him, who told you that you should take your existing entity and push it all over be so proud of yourself that you put it all over the shore, so that wherever people push, they pushed your entity. That's what the someone said against it. So that's what you learned in 770, not to make your entity put it everywhere so that it will be pushed. If you didn't put it everywhere, then it's not going to get pushed. So in a similar way, a person who is given to anger and to conceit, says the Rebbe, they are miyisod ha'esh shenigbar l'mayla. What is the important thing that the Alter Rebbe finds about the element of fire? Not that it burns. I mean, that's also a factor, that it burns and it tends to be very hot and frictionized, how do you call it, given to friction. The main thing about gaiva or chaos is that they go upwards. They are elevated lamaila. In other words, they take up space and they appreciate the elevation of their space into its fullest expression. And remember, that's what anger. If you weren't so insistent about the space of your own self, then you wouldn't have what to be angry about. And similarly, you wouldn't have what to be a conceited and bal gaiva sort of person, that somebody should tread on you and therefore cause you irritation. And therefore it comes from the Yesod Ha'esh. The principal matter that we're concerned about fire is that we see fire is always yearning restlessly upwards. In other words, it's always in the sense of its own self-elevation. V'taivers v'tanugim misaid hamayim. He said, Ki hamayim machmichim ko minei tanug. He said, lust and self-pleasures they're from the element of water. Ki mayim, water, machmichim ko minei tanug. Water causes to grow all forms of beautiful and how would you call it, desirable, run-afterable things. Water causes them to grow. Now that's a statement which is not common in Divrei Chazal, or it's apparently it's an expression used in one of the very great early authors, and the Alter Rebbe borrowed it here. In other words, that normally we assume that water is a praiseworthy thing. Water is however, the Alter Rebbe said that for the purpose of water going in the way of the clip of a sitra achra, going on the wrong side of the street, there's an old saying in Yiddish that water sticks. If you have a wet hand and you shake hands with something, he also gets wet. If you rub against water, then water sticks onto you. Your clothes become wet. In other words, that water has this ability to, as it were, cleave to things. And therefore, if you give to the idea of cleaving in Kedusha, then you cleave to good things, and you have good things. So together with that cleavage, there's a growing power in water. When you pour water into a growing area, then it promotes the growth. And that's also because water doesn't just run away from them. It sinks in and becomes one, and it sticks to the area in which it's been given. I mean, some entities run off, even though they're liquid or they're volatile. If they're poured on, they tend to run away and not form a firm union with the matter that they're being into. Well, water's not like that. So he said, because of that, because water sticks, and because water joins in and becomes linked with the union Kamoshahu, therefore it has an influential say in what happens with that particular thing. And therefore it causes, in the earth particularly, it causes things to grow. And because it becomes one, and it wets and moistures inyan. So the Rebbe says that that's in filling the self and in running after the matters of the self. Well, that's a concept of causing things to grow in the form of tanugim and taivas. What are tanugim and taivas? Things that you say, oh, I can't be without that. I must have that. I have to be stuck onto this. It can't possibly be seen as me and my life not having that. In other words, a cleavage and as it were, interreaction between you and a certain Indian, to the point that it's always growing and flowering. It's very easy for you to find all sorts of excuses and reasons why you need it, why it's impossible for you to be without it, etc., etc. Yeah, that's the concept of water. Machmichim kol minei taiva v'tainu. So we see that the element of water, if it's just pure water, is a good thing, a desirable thing. But when it's running in the way of when it's an element within this nefesh, then it's self-interested. And it says, I must have this, I must have that, I can't be without this, I can't be without that, and I'll prove to you. And the more he proves to you, the more it seems to grow and become important, and he's not able to overlook it, Beklal, in his life. So that's the concept of water. V'holeilus, v'leitzonus, v'yispirus, udvarim b'teilim, v'yisaid haruach. The element of air, or the element of what you might call wind or air, is how do you call it? It blows, it moves, and how do you call it? Air causes breath and air and movement of volatile, gaseous type entities. That's what we would say ruach indicates. Hoilelus. Now the word hoilelus is an interesting word in Lashon Kodesh. It means also somebody that he chases after all the tanugim in life, and he spends much more of his time running after what he thinks to be satisfying the lust and pleasures for himself, rather than what he should really be doing, as he's called a person that lives chayei hoilelus, and he's not living a serious or directed life. Therefore, somebody who lives a wild and unordered type of existence that doesn't really care much about where he's going or what his aims are. He's also called a ish hoilelus. He's living a way of hoilelus. So any form of unaimed, frivolous, running after a life of just not really doing anything in particular, but just living a wild and slightly defiant existence, that's called hoilelus. Hoilelus, leitonus is clownness, they call it overdone fun. Everybody understands in life that it's good, a sense of humor. Everybody enjoys an intelligent quip, even a slightly funny quip. People, we see that it's brought down in the Gemara Masechet Pesachim that before you teach people, you should say to them a word of humor, opens their minds and opens their sensitivities to inyanim. So, humor is a good thing. Leitonas is where humor's become a value in the Torah. People like being clown. In other words, what you might use the expression, they have Mesiras Nefesh for fun. They want fun at all costs. Well, that's called leitonas. It's sort of become too much, and it's overdone, and therefore it's a devotion to hot air, to running around after hot air. Hispirus is very much borders on what we saw in Eish Gaiva. Now, Hispirus is not exactly Gaiva. Hispirus is where the person likes to make himself appear in front of others in such a way that they will appreciate him. Gaiva, like we saw by the first case, was that's where you believe be'emes la'amite, and you believe, you feel according to proof, that you're really a big No. And that it's duty, honor, and the whole thing, and you're very, very important. But that's Gaiva. His Pyrus is the activity of life where you want to make yourself appear nice, important, and noticeable to people, so that when you come into society, people say, "Oh, this guy's he's well dressed, isn't he? You know, he's a nice looking guy. You know, he's a person that has obviously has got some value of how to run Gashmias." That's called his Pyrus. How do you call it? Oh, this is a man of taste. You know, all those inyonim. That's his Pyrus. It borders on Gaiva, but it's an art of appearing effective and splendorful, and being appreciated for that in the eyes of others. That's his Pyrus. It's also how do you call it, a lot of hot air. There's no reality to it. It's connected with Ruach. Dvorim B'Teilim is the same idea. Dvorim B'Teilim, everybody holds it. Have a little chat with somebody occasionally is a good thing. Relaxing, you know, to say out some interesting things, to tell an interesting story, to talk nicely with people. Dvorim B'Teilim is where conversation has become, once again, it's like Leitzonah. It's become too much of a value, and just talking all sorts of unimportant things becomes a value all of its own right. But it's called Dvorim B'Teilim. Now, not to be confused with Siddhisha Dvorim B'Teilim. Rav Mendel used to say, Rav Mendel Shalom used to say that there's such a thing as Siddhisha Dvorim B'Teilim. I know, you know, Siddim stand around on a corner of 7-7 and they talk about how great the Rebbe is. You know, they say that the Rebbe is like this, and you know, the Rebbe moved his hand this way, though maybe that meant something. So they could have been learning at that time. It's true. It's a little bit Dvorim B'Teilim, but it's Siddhisha Dvorim B'Teilim. It's things that bring them to appreciate the greatness of their Rebbe, and through that they, you know, obviously they become linked with higher inyanim, and they become more Siddish, and they sort of pick up a nuance from something they learn. That's not to be confused with that. That's already on the border of Kedusha. And he's got a right on that in our Ocean Tanya, but I won't go into it all now. We're a bit pressed for time. That's Chassidische Dvorim B'Teilim. Ordinary Dvorim B'Teilim, that's not good. That's bad. So the reason being that if you already become devoted to talking and devoted to just schmoozing, then eventually it leads to, God forbid, things which can be really bad news, not just evil in a mild way, but like things like Lashon Hara, for example, Rechilas, gossip, or damaging gossip, evil gossip, things of that nature can grow out of Dvorim B'Teilim. If you become used to just schmoozing the whole time, you're always like a schmooze, and you're a big mocker of the latest radio news, and you know all the latest jazz and all the latest inyonim, then that can lead Cholila into really serious matters like Lashon Hara, because it's just so easy to drop over the border from just talking apparently in inverted commas harmless nonsense into things which are forbidden. And therefore they come from the Yisod HaRuach. That's all from the gaseous part of the elements. The Atzvus Miyasod Ha'ofor. And he said laziness and depression, from the element of dust. In other words, the element of earthiness and dust. Now, here we notice the word atzlus. But the word atzlus, if you translate it, is laziness. So that means that there's something in the Nefesh HaBahamiyas that is called laziness. Now, I mean, laziness is a rather unusual type of thing. So it's not. Laziness doesn't mean that you lay around every day in bed till 12 o'clock in the afternoon or something. I mean, if you do, then you're suffering from laziness, but that's not what it necessarily means. Laziness means that a person's got in him a certain, what you might call, a holdback when it comes to do something. Lepoyo, there's always a certain inertia in a person it says, oh, you know, maybe I can do that later, or maybe that can be done another way. Who said I have to do that? Maybe, you know. In other words, whenever you're divided to take an energetic action and things have got to move, then there's all of a sudden this like almost unnoticeable inertia in a person, and it says, oh, you know, maybe later, maybe not at all, maybe, you know, maybe others will take care of it, you know, it'll be looked after, don't worry. You don't have to be the big doer of everything, you know. Who said that you have to be the big, let some other people have Gan Eden, you know? You know, in other words, why do you have to be the whole macher and the whole doer and the whole, that's Atzlus. So Atzlus doesn't mean where you just lay out on a couch with a cigar and nobody can move you. I mean, that's for sure that you have Atzlus if you're doing that. But that's not what the Alter Rebbe means here. Atzlus is where there's this almost you got to it, and that's what you're really supposed to be doing, and that's really what is expected of you, bein min hashamayim or bein min haaretz, and somehow or another you just miss the bus, you know. And even if you do it, you know, yeah, well, it's really a little bit unfair that I should be doing this, you know. But I'll do it, you know. Yeah, okay, you know, I did it, you know. That's Atzlus.
Is that different from procrastination?
Yes, procrastination. There's also, procrastination means putting things, you know, there's a word in English, or Latin, I think it is, means tomorrow. Procrastination is a Greek Latin sort of link, putting it off till tomorrow. So procrastination is a serious case of Atzlus. A person always saying, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it another day, I'll do it another time. I'm talking about a slightly more delicate thing, where there's certain things that have got to be done, and you sort of say, oh, you know, maybe I'll just do it, but, you know, who said I really have to do it? Why couldn't somebody else do it? Why does this always fall to me, you know? Or when it comes to time of a mitzvah, then you say, yes, I'm going to do the mitzvah and everything, but, you know, it's a little bit over the fence at the moment, you know, but, you know, I'll take it easy. You know. Now, I don't mean things with health. When it comes to good health, then that's another story altogether. Or the body's not well. But where the body could do it, there's no problem for you. And nonetheless, therefore my word was inertia. Inertia means a certain sort of, you know, holding back on the part of the Gashmi. And so the Alter Rebbe said that's from the Yesod of all. And then he said, where does that lead to? Well, what goes very close with that is Atzvus. And so Atzvus is where you become B'teva Marshchera. You know what Marshchera is? The black bile. You know, the Rambam, he held that there's red bile and there's white bile, and that the bile that goes off from the liver affects very much our actions. If it's black bile, then you tend to be sort of, you know, I'm not sure, yeah, maybe, until you fall into depression. You know, if people really knew what I'm suffering and what I'm going through, nobody really appreciates, even Hashem doesn't appreciate it. It's really bad, you know, things are not good, and it's, you know, it shouldn't be this way, it really should be some other way, and this is really, that's Marshchor. All of the great Hasidic teachers, all of them, not only Chabad, but all the other great Hasidic leaders, they were all very much against this idea of Atzvah, you know, until the fact that they saw it to be the ultimate point in leading into serious tumah. That if you get really upset and you can't feel the light and the motivation and the how do you call it, the levendigkeit of Yiddishkeit and of mitzvahs, then you're in a bad way. It's very bad. And the Alter Rebbe says in Amayim and Tovku Samach Beis, the Alter Rebbe says that the Iskufa Hanidrosses, how do you call it, when you walk through a door, you go over a step. What's that called?
Threshold.
Huh?
The threshold.
Threshold. very nice, beautiful. He said that the well-trodden threshold into all sorts of evil is atzvut. They bring delta. If you're upset and you, because he says that atzvut is really you're concerned with yourself. Simcha is where we're concerned with the Eibusha. We're happy to be doing what Hashem wants, and we're happy to be His servants. We're happy to do that which is expected of us. Atzvus is where you say, oh, you know, for me, it was good once upon a time, but not now. You know, another time, oh, you guys don't really understand. All sorts of reasons which come from the self, and they collide with the Ratzon of Hashem. And therefore, the old Rebbe says that if you fall into Atzvus, then you fall into Minira. And it was very interesting. Hashem should forgive me last night, but we had a little farbringen where I was for the Slichas. So I told them a story that the Talmudiya Baal Shem Tov and the Baal Shem Tov, they weren't so happy about the whole idea of saying Slichas. And there were some of the great Talmudiya Hamagid and others that developed into leading groups, Siddim, they didn't used to say Slichas at all. Because they used to say, it's depressing, it's like to put up, he hears the chazan say, oy vey, you know, that expression, oy vey, that was by them dangerous. It's like Atzvus Chas V'Sholem. Therefore they didn't go for it. And there's a very fascinating apparent proof that our Rebbeim, also on a Tainus Tzibur, on a public fast, that they didn't used to say all the slichas which are written. They used to say Tachana, and that was all. Because there was once a group of Chassidim, it's brought down in our Sefer. There's a group of Chassidim came to visit the Rebbe Rashab when he was in a holiday area on Yud Zayin B'Tammuz. He'd left a bit earlier in the year, and he was Yud Zayin B'Tammuz. He was in this place where he was, for the sake of his health, he was resting, resting. But anyway, he was where he was. And this group of Chassidim came out so that he should have on the fast day a minyan, you know. When the Shliach Tzibur came to saying he finished Tachan, and then he began with a nigan and with everything, he began saying the slichas, you know. So all of a sudden he saw that the Rebbe Rashab sort of looked at him and sort of raised his eyebrows, you know. And so he was you know, a bit concerned, you know. So he thought that maybe he wasn't, you know, wasn't the right nigan, you know, wasn't right. So he changed the nigan, he said it a bit more slower and a bit more, you know. And he quickly glanced in the Rebbe's direction. He saw the Rebbe looked at him again, and the Rebbe went like this to him, you know. So he got really concerned, you know. The nigan's not good, the words are not good, something's not good, you know. And then all of a sudden, the Rebbe sort of looked at him and made a sign that maybe don't really need to say all this. So in the end, they realized that the Rebbe would have preferred him to say Kaddish and not to say the whole thing. So that's what he did. He said Kaddish after Tachnan, and they read Kriyas HaTorah. So after one of the very big Chassidim who was very close to the Rebbe Rashab, he spoke and he said, you know, why we didn't say the Slicha. So the Rebbe hinted to him that it wasn't his custom. It wasn't the custom of many of the great Talmudiya Baal Shem Tov and their followers to say Slichas, and particularly on a Tainus Tzibur, which is anyway a day of year. So the Chassid said, but in Lubavitch, you know, in the shul, they say. So the Rebbe Rashab answered him a very amazing answer. And the Rebbe Rashab said that I've got a bit of a word in Lubavitch, you know, to say the least. He said, but I don't mix into gaboys. How do you say gaboys? The running of the, you know, the gabbai, the person he runs the shul. His concept is called gabaut. How do you call it? Gaboyas, it's called in Hebrew. All the running and the taking care of all the methodical running of the shul and all that, that's called gaboyas. So the Rebbe Rashab said that me and my family, we don't mix into gaboyas. We don't. So he said that That what I don't say that doesn't necessarily mean to say that in my shoe in the Baruch it could be they do, but that doesn't have to do with me. Just when I told the story last night, when the guys heard that, so I said, listen, I think we better say slichas. You know, I didn't mean to say that we shouldn't say slichas, but the Kochki, you know, the Yehuda, you know, Menachem Mendel Mikochk, he was one of the big Polish rabbis. He didn't used to say slichas, but once he came out, one Motzei Shabbos, everybody thought he was going to say slichas, and people came running all around to hear him say slichas, and he just said the first few words of the slichas. He said, L'cho Hashem HaTzedakah. He said, das ist emes. He said, that's true. That's true. And then he said, V'loni boishes hapunim. And he said, and we have the shame of the face. And he said, das emes. He said, that's also true. And he said, I go to work here, and he waved to everybody, he went back in, that was the whole slichas. So, I don't want to be making any revolutions on here, but, you know, Atz was very, very distrusted thing by Chassidim B'Klal, by old people connected with the message of the Baal Shem Tov. Atz was, as you saw, the offer. The offer is something which is heavy, you know. Once you get into Atz, it's difficult to pull yourself out of it. So maybe we could say that one of the milers of Gaiva, Vakas, right at the beginning is the fire at least goes upwards. It's, you know, something moves, and it's got a certain spiritual aspect about it. Maybe it's possible through a lot of this bonus and usage of the brain, because connected to the Gaiva's got to do with a certain aspect of the brain, as you can get out of it easy. But once you get into Atzvut, you know, into depression, and then you sink into the dust, it's very hard to get out. Well, this class is becoming a little bit broader than what I had assumed, but now says the Alter Rebbe something I really want to talk about at length, but I'm not going to be able to do it today, and then you guys are taking off soon and on the plane and everything, but maybe we might have another shiur before Yom Kippur or something. Anyway, V'gam, he says, Midas Tov. Now the Alter Rebbe adds the most amazing thing. He said, V'gam, Midas Tovos, Shevateva Kol Yisrael Betel Deisol. He said, these are evil midas. He called these evil midas, and they come from the four evil elements of this nefesh, Sitra Achra HaKlippa. He said, however, he said, in the makeup, the teva of all Yidden by birth, like we said, this is the nefesh that comes when you get born. This gets in early, this nefesh. It comes first, as the one on the whole thing. In the Gemara in Sanhedrin tells the story that Antoninus spoke with Rebbe, and Rebbe said to Antoninus, the big Roman leader, that the nefesh abam is, the Yetzer Hara claps in right away, as soon as you're born. As soon as you're shuttling out of the womb, you've already got it. That's Mamela. She says that this tevish betel deisam, in the way they're born, he said midas toives, good midas toives, which are in Yidden by makeup. They're in the very makeup of Yidden by birth. For example, he said Rachmanan, a Yid is by etzem teva a merciful person. How do you call it? A Rachmani. He's a merciful person. Goyim lech sodim. A Yid will always help another Yid. He always give from his own to help another person. And particularly, the word Goyim al chesed means to give him what's lacking him, to loan him something, to lend it to him. You're always ready to give for the other person. Goyim lech sodim. These are two midas, two inyonim, which are in the etzem teva, in the nefesh habosar, in the nefesh shabadam. They're in the makeup, which is by birth in every yid. Boish mimena. They come from this nefesh abahamiyah. He said, Ki be Yisrael, because in Yidden, nefesh zu de klippa, this nefesh, which is from the side of the klippa, he miklipas noiga. It's from a very special type of klippa called klippas noiga. How do you call it? A shining klippa. Now there's also a pasuk in Yechezkel, a Navi, one of the great Naviim, a word noiga, which it indicates that it's like a, how do you call it, something which is expressive and talkative, is also noiga. It shines and it gives forth a certain luminescence. It's klippa, but it's klippas noiga. It's like you might call it a shining and expressive type klippa, but it's a klippa. Sheyesh bo gam kein tov, that it's also got good. In other words, it's klippa, but it has good. Vehi misoid. This is from the secret of the eight hadas tov vora. And he said this nefesh that can be klippa, but it can have in itself also tov as well as ra. Come over. He said that is from the secret. Now the Alter Rebbe doesn't use the word soid, secret, stam. He said it's from the secret of the eight hadas tov vora. Now what's the eight hadas tov vora? That was a tree in Gan Eden. The eight hadas was a tree in Gan Eden, and it was B'tei Gan. It was already in the Gan. Now there was another big tree in the garden which was called Eit HaChaim. It was called the tree of life. In other words, the tree of life, what the Rebbe calls nowadays Chaim Nitzchiyim, everlasting life, life that just went forwards, because the Eit HaChaim is indicatory of only Ratzon Hashem, only revelation of Hashem through doing what Hashem wants, and B'meila giving rise to life, and to the expression of what Hashem is, be'etzem, life, everlasting life, an expressive life in a way that brings only benefit and addition and elevation and stance in life. That was the tree of life. And why was it the tree of life? It was the tree of life because it was bitul, only to Ratzon Hashem. It was a tree which if you ate from that fruit, you would just be batel to Hashem's will, and therefore you would just keep living. Nothing, just all. The other tree was called Eitz Hadas Tov Vora. There was a tree that he had knowledge, he had feeling, das, of Tov Vora. Meaning that if you ate from that tree, you got mixed up, you got confused, that wherever you had Tov, you had a bit of Ra, Rahman and Khan. And wherever you had a bit of Ra, there was a bit of Tov also. And therefore, you can never really sort out exactly 100% where you are. Because there's always a bit of Tov and there's always a bit of Ra. And remember, the Ra stains and lessens the Tov, and the Tov tries somehow or other to make war with the Ra, but not always succeed. So that's called a special tree, and there was a special knowledge of that you can only do that if you're involved, if you're drawn into that. If you got independence and you eat from the tree of the Eit HaChaim and you keep away from that, then you won't be drawn by it because you'll see that's confusion. But if you're given to das, if you're drawn to that, you feel, and it goes das is sensitivity, and you're drawn into that, and boom, you get confusion. And there's always, where there's Tov, there's Ra, and where there's Ra, there's Tov, and it's a big piece of work to sort them out and separate them. And that could be for thousands of years. That'll have to be done. What happened was that Chava, she got schlepped into the Das Tov. She felt and sensed that in. She got pulled in, and that gave rise to a special thing, and that's called Klippas Nega. Whatever, there's a mixture of Das, nothing 100% clear, that's Klippas Nega. The emissary Ra Klippas, the bad Klippas, everybody sees that they're Ra. They're Ra, clearly, and they were there at the beginning of the Bria also, but they were way down the bottom. They were at the end of the whole creation. There was a special tree which Hashem said, don't you guys have anything to do with it. But once you have to do with that, you bring in the das which is out on the other side of the creation. You bring him into a place where he doesn't belong. You bring him into my daily life of my creation, which I wanted should be only hotel and given over to my will and to my ruling, and you bring in this confusion and the sensitivity which is too complex for you, and eventually it can pull you into the other side, which is the Ra, because it's a mixture. And unfortunately the mixture is not a uniform mixture. There's more Ra than there is Tay. That's unfortunate. Therefore it's very, very easy to be drawn in. Once you get into that, you can be drawn into more than just confusion, but you can be drawn into evil, Rahman and Rahman. And that's a special Inyan, a special creation all of its own life. Hashem didn't want man to be involved with that, and he got himself involved. That's the Inyan of Tevra. The Maya with Yidden is that even the bad side of them, the Nefesh which is in the Dam, it's got this aspect to it. It takes from the sword of the Eitzaras Tevra, and it's also got good. It also has good. The Goyim, as the Alter Rebbe is going to say, they didn't have that. They take only from the Ra, and the Eitzaras is not for them. They don't have clippers. Only very rare individuals amongst them do. But they have the Inyan Ra, and that's something we're going to have to do with at great length, because many people were a little bit upset with the Alter Rebbe about that, and they didn't quite figure what he meant, and we've got to deal with it at some length, and we'll do so, Be'ez Hashem. Sorry I kept you, I kept you a bit late, I'm sorry. And Hashem Shalom, have a good year. Achsiv and Achsim Teva, Shalom Teva Matzukah.